This is Viterbi Voices.
Coming to you from the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering.
We're here to give you the inside scoop on research, classes, student life, and so much more.
All of these shared by students, faculty, alumni, and other members of the USC community.
We have spent the last 3-4 episodes, I don't even know, Maya, or at least every time you and I have talked over the last couple of weeks, we have talked, well, mostly because it's my fault. We've talked about Barbie, we've talked about Oppenheimer, and we've talked about Taylor Swift. And as advertised, this podcast is going to get into the Barbenheimer phenomenon because we decided that in our conversation, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff we want to talk about. And I'm certain we have other people that have seen it and have their inputs on it. So in a minute, we're going to dive into the analysis, if that's the best way to put it, the discussion, the feelings, the, I don't know, maybe controversial thoughts related to things related to Oppenheimer, things related to Barbie. And then at the end, the Barbenheimer phenomenon, what has been going on there. We'll get into all these things in this conversation. So the first warning for all of our listeners right now, before we dive into anything, this is going to be a spoiler-filled conversation. So if you have not seen Oppenheimer, if you have not seen Barbie, stop listening now and go buy a ticket to see both of these movies right away. You need to. You're going to love it. We loved it. There's lots of stuff to go over. And then come back and listen to us so we can discuss everything. So from an engineering student perspective, Oppenheimer, Barbie, there's some fascinating thoughts here I want to get into. And to help us, we have lots of people, not lots, well, more than just you and I, Maya. We have a few of us here.
Yeah.
That are going to discuss it. Let's get everybody tuned into your voices. But first, Maya, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I can start. Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Maya Neuenschwander. I am the co-host of the Viterbi Voices podcast with Paul. And yeah, we have been talking nonstop about this Barbenheimer phenomenon. I'm originally from Hudson, Wisconsin. In school, I study industrial and systems engineering. And I don't know if I said this, but I'll be a senior next year. Never gets old.
Yes. Celine?
Hi, everyone. My name is Celine Vasquez. I'm a senior studying biomedical engineering, and I'm from Montebello, California, and I'm really excited to talk some Barbenheimer today.
Grace.
Hi, everyone. My name is Grace Sampson. I'm currently a senior studying mechanical engineering here at the university, and I am from the very, very small town of Bluegrass, Iowa.
Woohoo! Got two Midwestern girls on here right now.
All right.
Woohoo.
Very cool. Very cool. And Grace, full disclosure, you are recording this from a parking lot in your car. You're not driving, but what was the situation?
I'm
what
not
happened?
driving.
What happened to get to this point of where you are and what you're doing for this podcast?
Well, I work for General Motors. I'm an intern this summer, and I entered for them last summer. And I worked a little bit later than usual. Usually I start with production at 5:45 in the morning, but we had a VP come visit the site today, and I stayed late until about 5:30, and then found out I was going to dinner with all the interns and the VP, and it went a little bit too long. So now I'm in the restaurant parking lot and ready to have a good time.
That's commitment. You went for a long dinner, which we don't want to miss those opportunities. And where are you actually located right now? Like, where are you working?
I'm in Spring Hill, Tennessee. So I work for the Spring Hill manufacturing plant. We do the Cadillac XT5, XT6, the GMC Acadia, and then the Lyric, which is our EV SUV. Well,
thank you for being committed to the Barbenheimer cause and staying in the restaurant parking lot in the middle of Tennessee to have this conversation. Maya, you're in Colorado, right? At your internship?
Yes, I'm in beautiful Boulder. I did not start at 5:45 today. Did not have as long of a work day as Grace. I actually worked from home because our power went out at work today.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I'm working for Medtronic this summer doing like project management infrastructure engineering. It's been super fun.
And Celine, your summer, where are you right now? What's been going on with you?
So I'm at home in Montebello, but every day I go to USC to work in my research lab, just prepping for PhD applications. And I actually went to Boulder, Colorado this summer and actually saw Maya, which was really fun.
Yes, we had a little crossover.
Can you give us a one-liner on your research?
Nanoparticles.
Nanoparticles.
And fun.
And fun. That's what's on the name of the door when you walk in. Welcome to Nanoparticles and Fun. All right, so Wow. Okay. So much to talk about, but before I stopped you all from talking to it before we got into it, but this is also like the Taylor Swift week in LA. And Celine, you're going?
I'm so excited.
What
Yes,
night?
I'm going on Friday, so in 2 days.
Oh my gosh. And you showed us earlier, but these giant patent leather white heeled boots you have going on, correct?
Yes, because
what era are you going as?
So I'm going as Folklore, specifically Mirror Ball, which is like a song on the album. So I have like a silver glitter top, and then I have like a disco ball headband and like disco ball earrings. And then like these tall white boots and a white skirt. So really excited.
Very cool. Now I know Maya is very salty and very bitter that she's not going, and I'm not trying to rub salt in the wound, but so I'll skip her for a second. But Grace, your stance on Taylor Swift? I know Taylor Swift is not in Tennessee right now, and we're all in LA about to go into Taylor Swift week. But what's going on with you and Taylor Swift?
I hate to break it to you guys, but I am not a Swiftie. I love her music, but I'm not very well versed in the Taylor Swift fandom. I don't know every song by heart. But when she comes on the radio and when my friends play her, I really enjoy her music. So,
okay, respect
awesome.
that.
Awesome. Well,
I'm a Taylor Swift ally.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I mean, like basically, Celine said all these words. I knew what each of them were, what they meant. I just didn't know what they meant all together, and I was just nodding and agreeing and saying, "Cool."
Fair. It's a lot. It's definitely a lot for people outside of that. I would be very overwhelmed.
Like I'm going as Folklore. Folklore, specifically Mirror Ball, specifically you said something else, and I'm like, totally.
I love it though.
Right. Love it. I'm in on it.
I'm on your wavelength, Celine.
Thank you, Maya.
I love it. Like the one thing, and this kind of just why I like this as a kickoff to Barbenheimer is I heard, if you guys know who Kevin Smith is, he's a filmmaker. He made like Clerks, and he made a bunch of movies, but he's a really influential kind of comic book writer, filmmaker, etc. If I point him out to you, you know who he is. But he was interviewed recently about certain movies, and he was basically saying, and I adopt this as my own view. I'm a fan of people being fans. You know, if you're a fan of something, that is like so cool. Whether I'm a fan of it or not doesn't matter. But I just love when people love things. And I think that when we get into this conversation, that's an important element to understand. And so when someone loves Taylor Swift, I'm not going to be like, oh, I hate Taylor Swift. I don't know it that well. I'm getting into it. I'm trying my best. But so yeah, some of these things are interesting. And we're going to the show. We're going next Tuesday. I'm excited for it. It'll be my daughter's first concert, and so that's going to be an exciting experience. She and my wife have been making friendship bracelets all day today.
Oh, I'm behind on that. I have not started.
Oh, you 2 days away. You better get on it, girl. Like it is a thing. And then I will let you know, Celine. Today, I don't know if you know all this, but the concert starts tomorrow, right? There's how many six shows. But today they opened up the merch tent.
I saw that. The lines were
I was there. I was there today. I went there today. We went there. My wife's like, hey, they're opening up the merch tent a day early. Maybe we'll go check it out. And then we both kind of looked at each other like, is that a good idea? And we went like, well, we'll go see. It was just what it's like. And then on the way there, because it opens at 10. On the way there, they're like, we realized, the parking lot opened at 8 and it's 9:45. And I'm like, well, we'll see what happens. We get there. The parking lot is packed at 9:45. This thing snaked around. Like there's the opening of SoFi, like the big SoFi, there's the lake, and it went back across the entire lake, zigzag 6 times, and then back around the lake again. And we're like, what is going on? So we get into the line just to see what's up. People have like camping chairs, gallons of water, umbrellas, and we're just like standing there. And the first thing that happened was my daughter was wearing one of her friendship bracelets. The woman behind us walked up and said, oh, it was like a friendship bracelet. And they immediately traded. And so my daughter's super excited. She's already got a first trade. We stayed for about 5 minutes, took some pictures of like what was going on, and walked out of there because I was like, there's no way we're going to be in this line.
I'm a Taylor Swift fan, but I'm like, I can order it online. And I know it will get here in like October, but I don't want to stand.
That's the thing. Line. We're like, okay, great. Well, you know what? I'm going to order online. We go online. It all looks great. Click, 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 buy. And on buy, it's like, it'll be there in October. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane.
They need some industrial engineering right there, supply chain.
And following up on our previous episode, a big shout out to Lissa, because she reached out to me and is mailing my daughter some of the friendship bracelets she made. We saw that on the last podcast. And so she's mailing some of her, because she did like these woven ones rather than like beads. And so she's going to be sending those tomorrow. So shout out to Lissa and thank you for all of the stuff that she's been doing. So she's sending some of those over. So, all right, T Swift, we're in. And Grace, I'm sorry we talked about it. I'm sorry we wasted your time. Maya,
no
and I'm
problem.
sorry you're
I think
salty.
It's super cool.
It's fun. It'll be fun. Okay, so Oppenheimer, Barbie. Weird that these things, I think they go together, which I think is important to understand. I think that's kind of my one stance I want to get at. But in order, let's just kind of break this down one by one. Let's talk about Oppenheimer first. I want to get your thoughts, your feelings, your impressions, experiences. What was Oppenheimer like to you? What are the thoughts and the questions you want to go over? Grace, let's start with you. What was Oppenheimer to you?
For me, I've never experienced a movie so emotionally as when I saw Oppenheimer. I know, especially in the scene where he's, addressing his community in New Mexico after
oh my God, yeah,
the bomb drops. I started to have a panic attack. Like I had to go step out of the theater and go into the bathroom and run water over my face because I was literally panicking. And I've never had a movie make me that emotional before. So I don't know if anyone else experienced the same thing. I mean, I watch horror films and nothing phases me. And this was like a whole different beast. My heart rate went crazy. It was insane.
That scene in particular was, I mean, like the sound design, the way it flashed horror images at you, and it was the looks on his face where it was like he's supposed to be celebrating, but now he's realized that he's unleashed hell on earth, if that makes any sense, and he's responsible for it. Oddly, having a panic attack and basically made you feel like a panic attack. I hope the filmmakers are listening. Like, how successful are they that they made you have I mean, that sounds horrible, but they made you have a panic attack.
No, I mean, after the movie, I just sat there kind of in silence in my car. I went to see it with my friend from work, and we just sat just in pure silence and just thought about it and kind of brought ourselves back down to earth because we were both emotional and, upset, crying after the movie and just needed to take some time. And I have never had that happen to me before. So it's just totally an out-of-body experience.
Now, Maya, I know you haven't seen it yet. You're the one on the panel that hasn't seen it. So I'm skipping you for our listeners for your reaction. But Celine, what do you, same, different?
Yeah, I mean, when I was watching that scene, I just couldn't help but feel like disturbed when everyone was like clapping about like this horrific bombing that had just happened. But the one scene that really stuck out to me and that I remembered after watching the movie was when they were first testing the bomb, like for the very first time, and I expected this giant explosion.
Yeah.
And I was like bracing myself. I was like in my seat, like with my friend and my sister, and I was like waiting for that explosion sound. It was just silence.
It just hangs there.
But I thought that was like the perfect choice because I felt like that silence felt a lot louder than like just an immediate explosion that you would be expecting. And
more accurate as far as the physics go. Like the idea of like that sound's not going to hit you for a bit.
Mm-hmm. And it just like was silent. I don't know for how long, but it felt like forever until released the big boom. Yeah.
It did. I have to both your points on both of these scenes, the Trinity test and that like pep rally thing. I have never felt the movie more than this movie, if that makes any sense. Like every single scene in this movie. So ostensibly, it's nothing but 3+ hours of people in rooms talking at each other. Like that's what this movie is. It's just people in rooms talking. That's all it is, with one explosion in the middle, and then it's back to rooms talking. Because there's the political intrigue and the timeline jumps and all the different perspective things, which from a filmmaking perspective is fascinating. Like what's black and white, what's in color, what do you hear, what do you not hear? The lack of CGI. There's no CGI in this movie, which is a fascinating fact that I found intriguing. I don't know if you guys have known that, but they filmed everything practically, even those atomic sequences to like show the atom splitting in the beginning and all those elements. They did all of that with light and perspective and just showing cool stuff that the explosion was real and they're not telling you how they did it. But the sound design and all those visuals and how they cut between all those things, even though it was somewhat boring dialogue, if that makes any sense, on the page, you didn't move. Like, you sat down and you got kind of drilled into your seat by all of the tension, by all of the stress, by all the pressure, by all the emotions and the feelings. And to your point, Grace, I had heard about this before going into the movie, that everyone kind of watches a movie and then they kind of say, like, I need some time. Like, I need some time to think about it. I don't know what I'm feeling. I want to talk about it with people, but not right now. And I knew that was how I would feel. But what I realized is I got up, my wife and I stood up and we're leaving the theater. And I didn't notice it till I got about halfway out the theater, is that I kind of looked up at the rest of the theater and I realized no one's moving. Like, at the end of a movie, people get up and they just leave. And usually it's like the awkwardness of who goes down the stairs and when you let them into your, like, all that element. But no one was leaving, because we were in these odd seats that we bought them last minute. So we got like I didn't have great seats, but like I could see everybody and they were just kind of sitting there and they didn't know what to do and they didn't know how to deal with it. And they're just stunned. The movie is stunning. And I think that word is used over way too much, but it's stunning. It is groundbreaking. It's a masterpiece. It's got dialogue that is like sharp, confusing, and interesting. It's got emotions that are crazy. It's a storyline that's real, but it is horrible. And then to get from this perspective, which is what I want to get to, as engineers, who you all are in this growing phase where you all have done some level of work and some level of production. You're at the end, if not close to the end of your undergraduate years, about to go into work, where you will be, if not already, designing technology that will have an impact on society. And what we talk about at the school all the time: engineering a better world for humanity, engineering society program, mindset of social consciousness, net positive impact on society, engineering ethics, philosophy and innovation, and unintended consequences of technology. All of those words that we talk about all the time are in this movie. Did you start connecting your lives and your profession and the stuff that you do to all of that panic attack that Oppenheimer was having and the realization?
That's exactly where my mind went. Not to jump right in,
please,
but that's exactly what I was thinking. And we take ethics our junior year at USC, and I think, to me, this movie proved the importance of ethics being intertwined in our education from our freshman year all the way to our graduation. And really, I mean, I think this could be taught. This movie could be watched and analyzed in an ethics course. And I think it's something that needs to be prevalent from our first day at USC and with all of the companies that USC students end up working with. I think this dialogue is very important to be having much, much earlier in our educational careers instead of waiting all the way until our junior year. And that's something that I really sat with after I finished the film.
Do you all think that so ethics is always a really interesting conversation, because you analyze, for the most part, you analyze case studies in the past. Would you have done something different? You know, if you look at Oppenheimer. But do you actually think that anyone would have done anything different given the stress and the pressure and everything that was going on in the context of that race of World War II?
Yeah, so during the movie, I was just thinking, like, you have this really smart, capable person and surrounded by really smart people. And throughout the whole time, I was like, how can you make something that's so deadly that can, like, destroy many lives? But I also was not, like, in that context, but I just, like, couldn't help but think, like, why would you even put yourself in that situation? But a lot of times during the movie, when Oppenheimer was talking, like, he seemed like very objective about everything. Like, this is, like, for science and, like, for, like, the race in general, like, to be, I don't know, they were talking, like, beat the Nazis.
Beat the Nazis, yeah, because the Germans, like, had already split the atom.
Yeah, so that was, like, that's scary to think about, like, in that time. So it's like, okay, we have to beat them. But then there was a point and a shift where it's like, oh, like, they're actually not building an atomic bomb anymore. But then they just kept going, and that just, like, was really interesting to me. But he just seemed like he wanted to get the job done at that point. That's
the fascinating element related to ethics in regards to engineering and science, is that a lot of scientists, it is a blatant simplification, but scientists and engineers tend to try to think of things purely objectively. Like it doesn't matter what's going on, but as a result of that, I think there's blinders on to the rest of everything else that's going on, which is, should we be doing this? And granted, at the time and the day, lack of information, partial information, World War II, would anybody do any different? Now, the real question is, what would we do now? But, we deal with our peers, our alumni that go off and other engineering schools as well that go off and make weapons. You work for Lockheed Martin, you might be making a weapon.
Yeah, I know. Even in the Society of Women Engineers, like that was a big question that some people had raised, like depending on which companies were donating money, like some people were very anti that, like taking money from a defense company. And I don't know, it's a really interesting spot to be in, like as a student.
Because the other side of that coin is, and this is the point of Oppenheimer in the movie, is you can be morally against, let's say, a weapons corporation, or morally against the advancement or the creation of an atomic bomb. But what if someone else is going to make it? Mm. And so that's the interesting ethical dilemma, Grace. I mean, like the idea of ethics and these conversations really never having the right answer. How does that enter into a practical conversation related to ethics?
Well, I think that was another one of my favorite parts in the film, is when I know Oppenheimer and one of the other engineers are watching the two bombs leave in the back of these two essentially pickup trucks, these bombs that are going to do catastrophic damage. And they're kind of pondering whether or not Japan would surrender if they knew the impact one of these bombs would potentially have on one of their cities. And just that constant going back and forth and, well, they completed their job and someone was going to do it eventually, as opposed to, well, but what if they knew the damage that it was going to cost? And it's difficult. And that's why I think it is important for an ethical discussion and just thinking about these questions, especially for students that are going to go on and do defense work, so that they can have this inner dialogue when they're making decisions.
Well, I mean, let's not also simplify it to just defense work, and that's my fault because I took it there. But I mean, like this.
Oh, definitely. This for the EV industry.
This is an easy parallel to artificial intelligence.
Oh, definitely. To anything. The sourcing of lithium batteries right now is very unsustainable. There's a lot of ethical discussions that could be had there. I mean, this applies to any engineering industry that anyone could go into. I totally agree with you. It shouldn't be. I mean, obviously, this movie glaringly highlights defense, but it shouldn't be limited there. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I'll give you another example that's seemingly innocuous. PepsiCo and sustainable agricultural and development around the world. And you want to get really micro on it. It's about sustainable and supportive micro agricultural development for potato farmers around the world. Basically, all the potato chips that we eat from Frito-Lay, which is owned by PepsiCo, a really good friend of mine works in that field, works for PepsiCo. And it's all about trying to figure out how to create these pipelines that are not abusive and erosive and that are thinking about sustainability from the world and the landscape kind of perspective, but also from the idea of supporting these smaller developing nations and the people inside of them, because they're just growing potatoes.
Definitely. It also brings up the issue of agriculture in the Midwest and the soybean and corn industry and how fertilizer affects the Mississippi River and has eventually created a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. And these are chemical companies that develop these fertilizers. So an engineer could end up working on one of these developments and could have contributed to that. And it's a discussion that needs to be had.
Yeah. And I've said a few times in some recent presentations that engineering ethics is something that is not necessarily traditionally taught at engineering schools. And that's why I think it's something that we have to keep bringing to the forefront. And while there is not a good answer to these questions, it is about teaching your generation that the questions should be asked, they should be discussed, they should be brought up. And it's about the most innocuous things. I mean, Celine, we put like this really simple concept related to nanoparticles, and we put that name on your research earlier, nanoparticles and fun. But can you explore with me without going too deep or getting in trouble with saying too much about your own research, which sometimes you're not allowed to talk about, But can you talk about unintended consequences of the research you're doing now, where this might go down the road? Have you ever thought of it? I'm putting you on the spot.
So the research I'm doing right now is trying to use nanoparticles in order to, let's say if you have like a tissue sample from a cancer patient, being able to use nanoparticles to identify like what type of immune cells are in their system to use immunotherapy in order to treat them better. But I haven't necessarily thought down the line of what that looks like in like clinical trials or what that looks like once it's developed by like a biotech company. But I know that there are a lot of issues with once you have this medicine or therapeutic strategy developed, that's really expensive and not a lot of people can afford that once it gets into the hands of different companies. So that's potentially something maybe not being accessible to everybody. But that's the gist of what we're trying to do.
It could also, it's a slippery slope argument, but it could also go down the road of like cosmetic geneticists, like the ideas of like understanding where your genes are going and therefore as a result doing this preventative stuff to prevent your gray hair in the future. Or then the ideas of like it gets really down the road, which I know is not necessarily related to what you're doing, but a lot of people talk about like designer babies, like the ideas of like picking out the DNA that you want. I mean, this is the best part about movies is we look to the arts. We look to the arts because the arts are discussing these things time in and time out, because you go back and look at Gattaca, that's what Gattaca was all about. Have you guys ever seen Gattaca? Oh, no. New homework assignment. Okay. It is
how do you spell that?
Gattaca, Gattaca. You all read Brave New World in high school, correct?
No.
Nope.
Oh my God, you never read Brave New World? Okay. You have a lot of different homework assignments now. 1, you got to go read Brave New World. 2, supplement sidebar to this, given that we're talking about World War II, you might want to go read Animal Farm. If you read Animal Farm?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep,
so,
I read Animal Farm.
Okay, so that creates kind of the geopolitics of what's going on in World War II. Especially as this was funny, is really funny, interesting to think about. It's like you have to remember, like, when were the Soviets our friends versus when were they their enemies? Like back in Oppenheimer, like that was the interesting political dynamic of like when we're fighting the Nazis, the Soviets were our allies, and then it turns into the Cold War right after that. And what's interesting is I never knew that it was seemingly a direct result of this kind of secret knowledge related to atomic bombs, and then eventually the H bomb, which I didn't know before. That was kind of, I don't know if you guys knew that, but that was like fascinating to me. Anyways, go read Brave New World. Gattaca is a movie with Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman. A little trivia: this is where they met. They got married. They had a kid.
Oh.
Their daughter is now.
Interesting.
What's her name? You've seen her daughter.
Maya?
You've seen Maya Hawke. Yes, that's their daughter from this movie. So,
interesting.
So go see Gattaca. And it's all about the idea of like what we just talked about, like designer geneticists and designer babies and like what you get picked for to do, which in a kind of a future world of like what technology can do to us down the road, which seemingly creates nothing but beautiful people. Well, what are the ramifications of nothing but beautiful people and what's underneath all that information? So go watch that. That's fascinating. But we look to the arts. We look to the arts for inspiration. We look to the arts for critical analysis, and sometimes, hopefully, holding up a mirror back at stuff like this. Nuclear development, nuclear fission versus fusion, and all the stuff that's happening. Another side note that I'm super interested about is I had no idea that these huge names in physics and science in general all knew each other. Like
when I saw Albert Einstein on the screen, with Oppenheimer, I was like, wait, this is.
And they've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
Niels Bohr, Heisenberg, Oppenheimer, Einstein. I mean, and then some of the names that were on the team, I honestly didn't know, but I'm like, I think I've heard them before, but I didn't know they all knew each other around the world. And the fact that Oppenheimer, let's talk also about the fact that his name was Oppie. He went by Oppie.
Yep.
How cool is that?
Gonna say that's like my freshman and sophomore year of college right there, all those names.
Yeah,
like every science class I had to take is covered.
Yeah, everything in the physics book, like it's in this movie, and they're the real life people, and they were talking to each other.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because I'm like, oh, they're all kind of like friends in a way, like coworkers. It's just really interesting to think about.
Which also, to your point earlier, Celine, about scientists viewing things objectively, like there's no emotion involved. That objective relationship didn't have political or geopolitical boundaries, right? So the idea that they were in Germany and they were here and they were there, they were everywhere because that's where the science was being captured and shared around the world.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. This is really interesting hearing you all talk about Oppenheimer. Like, I was planning to see it anyways, but it's even this discussion is like totally different than like the videos that I've seen, or like I don't know what I assumed it would be.
It's a must watch.
It's one of those things where like you're gonna want to watch it again. Like it doesn't make you feel good, but it doesn't make you feel bad. It just makes you constantly think.
Yeah, and I feel like it's something that I didn't really think about before necessarily, and just like after the movie, I felt like slightly like in danger. Like these things are out there, and like someone can just press a button anytime, and I don't know. That was just like a really scary thought, but also really necessary for us to have these conversations.
Totally right. Imagine how scary everything we just saw was, and that was 80 years ago.
Yeah.
So how scary is everything now?
Exactly. That was like the main thing on my mind after the movie. I'm like, I am living in 2023. Like this is completely different and like even scarier now.
And I think anytime, and I think that's one of the best parts about having some sort of a, whether you call it a historical drama or whatever you want to get into with this movie. When you view it through the lens of today, all you can do is draw parallels to stuff that's happening today, and conversations related to artificial intelligence are the low-hanging fruit related to this. Unlike intention, unintended consequences, what's it going to do? There are horror stories in media about, Skynet or anything else that might happen, but who knows what these things can do down the road left unchecked. So I think that's what's really fascinating to me about this, is that hopefully people in positions of power, people like you all that are about to go into positions of power, are asking those questions and moving through. Another point that I'm super curious for you all to, whether you saw this or just to think about it now, is that there were these two perspectives on the Los Alamos kind of team, right, as they were building it out. And there was Oppenheimer's objective science thing that we just talked about, right? No boundaries, sharing of information, objective analysis. It's all for the science. It's only for the science and for the progression of ideas. And then there was the military involvement, and their rules were all about secrecy and compartmentalization. Because compartmentalization would hold things in and keep things safe as a result of that. I'm curious whether you all have started to understand whether there's parallels to what you do now in your, even we get to like VSA leadership stuff, Maya, on a group's tendency to work as hard as they can to organize structure, essentially compartmentalizing things, and as a result of stuff might be reducing transparency and the sharing of information, and these two different ends of the spectrum on organization and teamwork. How does that affect what you do now, and where do you lie on it?
Yeah, I feel like that idea just kind of reminds me of the pandemic in general. It's like at first nobody knew anything, but then you have like scientists like trying to figure out like what even is going on, and then you have like the government saying like you can't tell people certain things at a certain time. Just like that was really prevalent in like 2020, 2021. Just reminded me of that.
Totally.
It's very reminiscent of my work on the formula team at USC. The intersection between our electrical engineering team and our mechanical team were so compartmentalized into who's designing the electrical wiring for the battery and who's designing the actual housing for the battery that we forget the intersection between the two. Then we have a lot of disconnects. We have one team that's designing with no boundaries because they don't have to think about this electrical system ever being put inside a box. And then we have one team that is only thinking of the box. And then there's not a lot of intersection between the two. So now we have liaisons between the two teams, but we're still having to do a lot of finagling and reorg to try to get the two teams to work better together.
It seems to be everyone's instinct that compartmentalization, which is a broad term, and I think people do it in a lot of different ways, but compartmentalization is the first step to efficiency. And I think that's what like everyone's intent is. Like, well, no, you do that and I'll do this, and then we'll come together at the end, because we will be wasting time with the friction that will develop in the middle. Meanwhile, you might be creating a giant log jam at the end because you didn't communicate along the way.
Yeah, it's like it starts with delegation and like allocating resources in a way that's the most efficient. But then another thing I think, and this might just be myself or people like in my internship, for instance, but like some people like with their own compartment and their own thing, like get very protective over that and like competitive versus other groups. Like I want to be the one that like, I want my group to succeed. I want my group to be like the one that's known as like, I don't know, like the most successful group. And that can definitely hinder the overall success as a group. But I think compartmentalization definitely leads to the feeling like the fracturing of groups and the feeling of like sub factions that priorities are definitely not always aligned.
I think it's like opening. I think it's like opening Pandora's box. When you start to compartmentalize, then you get subcommittees and then more subcommittees and then more leaders. And then you have a whole bunch of leaders and not a lot of people working towards the common good or the common goal. And you just lose sight of that. There's no greater mission. There's just your small team's purpose and what you need to fulfill to move on to the next step.
And then that also starts to create the meetings about meetings.
Yep.
Which everyone loves to hate, but they don't realize how they got there. And it starts with these initial steps.
Yeah. It's a good reminder for, I don't know, like going into the school year, going to group projects, but also just like going into the working world, like definitely being aware of compartmentalization and how that can be detrimental.
Yeah. Like Stacy and I were talking about everyone on everyone's teams and like who's on whose teams and what do we do here? And I'm like, why are we creating teams? Like,
yeah,
first question I got to ask yourself.
We just had that discussion actually, like in our content leads meeting, where we were like, I think this would work better if we're just all aligned and like everybody can step in and work on things when they need to.
Yeah. And it's a pendulum. I mean, fluidity and flexibility, rigidness and compartmentalization. It's all about understanding the spectrum, and it's all about navigating a team where they need to go, when they need to go, based on whatever the task is at hand. In some situations, you might lean in one direction, and in the other situation, you lean in the other direction. But with engineers in particular, what I always notice with almost all of you and your predecessors is that there's this desire to create the boundaries. Give me my defined workload, because then I will know whether I am successful. And that could be just because the sense of quantification of work, a sense of understanding this work compared to other work, because you all are all very busy. But it leads to that idea of not over what you said, the one overarching mission. What are we trying to do here? And that could change as we go. So fluidity and flexibility are key.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to get to Barbie, but I want to have any other last, because then Maya can totally jump in here. I want her to drive. But last thoughts on Oppenheimer for anyone. What do you tell people about it? What were you shocked by? What was exciting to you about it?
I think that when people ask me how the movie was, the first thing that they mention is that it's 3 hours long.
It doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't feel like it. Like after that movie was over, I was like, wait, that's it? Like that was 3 hours. Like I think that's what stuck with me the most, is how well done the movie was, where it didn't feel like I was sitting there for 3 hours, just because I felt like I was like in the moment in the movie.
I think what I'm left with is, you say, you only see one explosion in the movie, but I felt like I was feeling 8 explosions throughout the 3 hour duration of the movie. I felt like it was explosion after explosion, whether it was the way that they framed certain dialogue, the lighting and sound that was added to dialogue. You're feeling the entire story play out. And I think it's important to let it take you for a ride and allow yourself to feel it, because I feel like that's how you learn and grow as a person. And I feel like that's important to that ethics dialogue that we were having earlier too.
You're dead on. When I'm asked about the movie, I'm like, my first response is, you just have to see it, because there's nothing I can do to explain it to you as to how good it is. It is immersive in the most detailed version of that word. It is immersive. You sit down, the movie starts, you don't move. Like you just don't move. You get kind of drilled into your seat. And what's weird about it is because it's dialogue and sound design, and the story is like you're trying to keep up with it because it's going so fast. And the last thing that I think I'm so intrigued by is some of the uses of metaphor and particularly visuals, and how the movie opened. The movie opened with raindrops on water to show ripple effects. One little thing, the ripple effect that moves all the way through, and it just keeps going and getting bigger, 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 bigger. And then their overall concern in the movie of igniting the atmosphere on fire and destroying the entire world, changing the entire world forever because of some sort of mistake they made. And then he actually realizing it in that pep rally that that's what they did. And it wasn't so much igniting the atmosphere and fire and burning everybody, but it's that they just changed everything and has now set the world on a completely different trajectory. And the ripple effects of those conversations in that one physics hall, in that one time period, go all the way into this other thing, and all the different interactions in between. It's just, yeah, you start looking at your life like, what do I do? How do I do these things? What mistakes have I made? Like, how do I move forward and make sure that, I'm aware of these elements down the road? It's a deep movie. I can't wait to see how well it continues to do and how more people will be able to see it. But what seems like is going to be a giant whiplash. Hi, Barbie.
I was just going to say, how in like, hi, Barbie. I was gonna say, like, how in I don't know, less than a minute of time, how can you frame like the differences and the shift between Oppenheimer and Barbie? I haven't seen both, so this is the question for you guys.
Did anyone see them in the same day? I didn't see them in the same day, and I wish I would have.
I don't know.
That's the experience.
I was told beforehand, see Barbie first, then Oppenheimer. And I think that's as a result
of
when
what
you
I
leave.
did.
Okay, because when you leave Oppenheimer, you're like, whoa, existential crisis. Even though Barbie is about an existential crisis. When that's why I think they're connected.
This is our pivot.
My
existential
thing with
crisis.
Barbie is they had physicist Barbie and they had astronaut Barbie. I don't know if you guys know this, but I had her. There was an engineer Barbie, and I was really hoping that engineer Barbie would have made an appearance, and she didn't, and I was really sad about that.
We need to take issue with that. This is one of my larger issues. I used to actually give presentations on this, and now I might work this back in because now it's relevant. I used to give presentations about like, how do you know you want to be an engineer? And I have these old slides, and maybe I'll dig them back up again and start giving this presentation again. Because if you go Google the word engineer and you look at image search, have you guys ever done this?
No, but
you actually if you do it, and I haven't done it in a while, but I'm sure it hasn't changed. The image search results are a bunch of white males wearing construction hats holding like plans. Is that what you're seeing right now?
Sounds about right.
That's exactly what this is. Yeah. Oh, there's a nope. That's a man. Never mind. There's a couple women.
At engineer Barbie. She has a little pink laptop and glasses.
I'm totally down. My larger point here is that no one knows what an engineer is, even though the majority of things that are happening in the world are done by engineers. People understand the word scientist. They don't understand the word engineer. They understand the word researcher. They don't understand the word engineer. And people on the news will talk about like researchers have developed, scientists have developed, and usually the people they're talking to, like they have engineering backgrounds, or it's a company that's an engineering company. Like these are the things that happen. When you look at the other parallel I would come up with is, so if you do image search for that, you get this construction worker person, which is weird, like a construction manager person, which definitely involves engineer, but it's such a limited scope. If you Google lawyer, image search on lawyer, you get this incredibly diverse group of people doing all sorts of things. They're highly attractive. They're like super involved in like books, and they're very powerful and everything else. If you Google image search doctor, same idea, different scopes of everything. And so you have these well-known kind of visual representations of profession. Then you go to, do you guys ever play when you were kids, the Game of Life?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I loved Life.
Right. Is there an engineer job? No.
No,
In
doctor was what I
60
always wanted to
something
be.
years of this, the highest paying profession has been doctor and lawyer. And the closest they got to it was in the most recent version of the Game of Life. They created a profession thinking they were hip with the times. They created web designer as which is not engineering at all. You all know this. And so like that was the hip new thing, is like hairstylist, web designer. They still kept doctor, lawyer. So as a result of that, if you're a kid and you're interested in STEM, math, science stuff, and you're looking at future possibilities of what you want to do in the life, doctor, lawyer makes so much more sense. Barbie's another great example of this. If maybe they had an engineer Barbie, but maybe it didn't make sense in the world. People didn't understand what it was. Maybe that's why they didn't put it in the movie. What is engineer Barbie?
It could have made sense though. I mean, as
today,
a mechanical engineer, I love the automotive industry. They're featuring all these beautiful vehicles that are going to hit market very soon or have already hit market. And getting to work for the company that produces these vehicles, it would have been great to see an engineer Barbie and see her maybe interfacing with the.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I think the hard part is though, like that's my point of like, to the layman, you just described car designer Barbie. You didn't describe engineer Barbie. There's a disconnect in society about the word engineer and what an engineer does, mostly because even just on this panel, you're all individual definitions of engineering and your professions in which you're going into in the field. They're totally different.
Yep.
So, I mean, this is a great thing to kick off, like engineering and women and identity and what are we dealing with in society? And Barbie was similar to Oppenheimer, is a fantastic mirror back to us as to what we're dealing with and the fascinating conversations that were happening as a result of essentially an existential crisis of a middle-aged woman that was the key protagonist of this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what you're saying is engineer Barbie could be the Barbie of all Barbies.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. For context, I don't know about you, Celine, Grace, and Paul. I don't know about your daughter, but for me, I loved Barbie growing up. Was like such a big fan. And like even with the identity, like honestly, even as a brunette, like my Barbies were normally blonde. And I was like,
right.
Okay, fine. Like we'll still play with them. But yeah, and it really hit home with her daughter and just the discourse around like around how Barbie was portrayed and how that could be like toxic to women. Because I think I went through that phase as well, where I was like, oh, like Barbie is like, oh, all women are supposed to be that way. And then I think as I was growing up, I saw Barbie start to become more and more representative of all different kinds of people. But I definitely think like starting to play with Barbies, I had that mindset of that daughter. Like Barbie is just pushing like,
get away from me, fascist.
Yeah. I had an LOL moment in the movie theater for that one. But yeah, I don't know, Celine, Grace, do you guys have any similar thoughts with Barbie?
Yeah, so I originally like had that same idea, but in the like very first scene of the movie when they're showing like all the little girls playing with like babies and like playing like mom or like house, like that idea, I didn't realize that like having Barbie kind of like changed that idea. Like you don't have to be taking care of a child like with your doll, like as a 5-year-old. Like you can have an adult like doll that you can play with that like has her own life and like her own car and like her own brand. Like I didn't realize like how cool that was and like how Barbie shifted that narrative. So that was a really good intro to the movie, just thinking about that.
I totally think that's a big part of this. And this gets to the main paradox of the movie. But I know, Grace, you have to get out of here. And I know you've got a drive home. Dude, is there anything else you want to say before you tap out of this related to Barbie or the Barbenheimer crossover?
I'll leave it on a lighthearted note. The two products that I really appreciated seeing in the Barbie movie, I had Pooping Dog Barbie, and it was my favorite. I loved playing with it. So I love seeing that. And I think everyone can agree that they had at least one weird Barbie. And I loved Kate McKinnon's character because I think we all resonated with it. I had a Barbie that unfortunately I cut all her hair off and tried to dye her So I thought that was awesome. And I think it just is something that ties us all together and brings us that much closer to the story and the narrative that they're trying to tell. So thank you guys so much for having me on the podcast. I hope to be on many, many more and talk about my experiences over the summer with you guys. But thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Grace.
Thanks, Grace. So I so far agreed with everything that's going on. What was really interesting is the idea of the paradox, which Celine, you brought up. I didn't think of it till right now. It starts in that moment where Barbie was a giant social and progressive step forward on identity of women and culture. And yet the whole, back to your point, that a number of women view it as oppressive, and this idea of you have to look a certain way to be accepted in society in order to be the quote unquote beautiful, perfect, successful, whatever it is, woman that's out there. And all Barbie has ever done as an idea, which is like the point of the movie, as an idea, not as a person, has constantly moved the conversation forward in relationship to women. And that was the paradox that was explained in America Ferrera's, USC alum, by the way, America Ferrera's giant monologue, which was women are expected to be perfect, but never perfect. They're expected to have everything figured out, but always be asking questions. I don't remember her speech, but I want to have that speech written out. I want to read it.
It was so good.
It was amazing.
Yeah. As she was talking, I was just like, that is literally just summed it up like so eloquently and like perfectly. And I think that was like the best thing about the Barbie movie, is that I just feel like it was like representative of so many people like on the screen, and was just able to like articulate that experience in a really fun way. Like, it was such a cool movie.
Such a great movie. Such a great movie. And just that idea of the marketing campaign I want to touch on was fascinating, because one of the ads that resonated with me was, if you love Barbie, you'll like this movie. And if you hate Barbie, you'll like this movie, which actually got to that core of that paradox, which was how you view Barbie is really interesting. And let's talk about it, because it's actually how you view women in society.
Yeah. And like, even with the different perspectives from the mother to the daughter to even like Ken throughout the movie, like I think it really did touch on almost what everyone's thoughts of Barbie are.
Yep.
Yeah, which was definitely I think that makes that a universally interesting movie. Like, maybe it's not everybody's favorite movie, but everybody has to admit, like, it's interesting. It holds your attention. I personally love it. But what do you think about the hate and the people who don't like the Barbie movie?
That's where I was going. I'm glad we're on the same page. I was going to ask you whether anyone in your circles has expressed anything other than love for Barbie.
No, but I've seen TikToks where it's like, people are like, oh, if you take like your boyfriend or like your husband to Barbie and like they say they don't like it, like it's a red flag.
It is a red flag.
TikToks that I've seen on that. So I think that it's really funny just thinking about people's reactions to that. And I feel like maybe people who like automatically just like diss it and don't like it. I even saw a TikTok of like a guy just like scrolling through his phone like during the movie. I just feel like it's not like, you're not open to like that conversation or like the perspective that the movie offers.
What makes it a red flag, Paul? In your opinion?
A lot of things. So there's so much things that I don't want to support and give time to a lot of the hate that's out there about this movie. I do want to highlight that it is a small fraction of people that are getting amplified in TikTok and other realms. There's 45-minute YouTube rants on how it's anti-men. And I'm like, I think it's okay. Even if it was anti-men, which it's not, even if it was anti-men, there's plenty of things that have been anti-women throughout centuries. I'm pretty sure we can balance it out a little bit more these days. Like, hey, it's fine. Lots of thoughts. I'm trying to figure out how to like encapsulate them succinctly. If someone goes into this and thinks that it's bad, it is a red flag, because that means they have, in my opinion, I believe that they have an inherent belief structure that means that women shouldn't be thinking any of these thoughts. And if someone thinks it's bad, it's actually proving the point of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard about that. I've heard that point before, and that one really resonated.
Right. It's like, yeah, that's what it's about. Like the fact that this exists in real life. I mean, this is where the parallels keep coming back to Oppenheimer in a weird way. We talked about unintended consequences of technology related to Oppenheimer, but this is about social structure and the intended or otherwise unintended consequences of where we are and how we view people's gender roles. And as a result of which create toxic environments in workplaces or otherwise. I mean, there's the common tropes that you all are very aware of, especially in a field such as engineering, which is male dominated around the world. Now, it's not at USC, but it is everywhere else in every other circle that you're in. And so you get this idea of like, are you the quote annoying girl that keeps talking? Right. I mean, like that's, again, not my perspective, but like that type of term. And there's worse terms to be described that way. Whereas a man who's assertive and as a cephalo, then he's strong and a leader, but that's someone that's incredibly negative as a woman. Like these paradoxes exist in our social structure. And in this movie, all it did was call it out. And my favorite line that I've used ever since I saw this movie is, ever since I learned the patriarchy wasn't about horses, I kind of just lost interest. Like it was just one of the funniest things in the world because he thought he was getting some sort of power. But really what we are as men and what I see in young boys is we're just a bunch of dumb idiots. We're a bunch of dumb idiots that have been put into a social structure that says we're in charge. And that's not the case. And you can look at it historically or anthropologically and look at matriarchy-driven societies. Typically Native American societies and a lot of other Latin American societies are all matriarchal driven. And as a result of that, end up having stronger composures of family. And then moving forward, and any type of patriarchy led decision historically has always led to conquering and dismantling. And whether that's Rome or whether that's Napoleon and whether it's Alexander or anything else, it doesn't go well. And then we go back to compartmentalization, secrecy, privacy, and transparency and objectivity and working together. And you can start to see male roles, female roles. It all starts coming together, which is just super fascinating to me.
Yeah, I'm thinking of this now, but like the part where like the like male dominated, like when Barbie is still dominated by like all the Kens, and the Barbies are all like, oh, like this is nice, but they're not talking to each other. But as soon as they begin to have these conversations with each other and they hear America Ferrera voice like their thoughts and the reality, then they snap out of it. So in a way, I think that's an interesting commentary on like when we all begin to like have these conversations and be vulnerable and open and transparent with each other, like that's when the real progress is made and we're more powerful as a group.
Yeah, and I feel like that's where the Barbie movie comes in too, because it's like providing this like voice and this experience and like showing like, hey, like this is something that a lot of people besides you go through and experience, and then opens up like these dialogues, which I think is really important.
And I think that's ultimately the beauty of the Barbie movie, or the idea of Barbie. And I didn't know that because I don't have a lot of exposure to the Barbie IP in my world. Nor have I ever, I mean, I know it exists, but I have the same kind of superficial pink girliness, right? Like that's kind of like, that's what Barbies do. And there were many conversations when my daughter was younger about the pink aisle at the toy store. Or at the toy, like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this. And that's the whole inspiration for, it's a Stanford female engineering grad who started, oh my God, I'm going to forget the name of this. I started this conversation. I forgot it. Do you all know this?
No.
Is it like a studying color?
She started a toy line for girls that are all about, it's all about engineering. And
Goldie Blocks.
Goldie Blocks. Thank you. And we jumped in on it at USC. There was one year where we bought a ton of Goldie Blocks boxes and we mailed them to every single admitted female student to the school. And I loved my idea. I liked it a lot because it was my idea. But we mailed out Goldie Blox boxes to every admitted female student this one year. And I sent a letter, and I said, the first thing I said is, congratulations on your admission. This is not for you. Your job is to take this and give it to a younger girl and play with it and see what happens, and like pass it on. Like, you've gotten here, you're interested in engineering, you're going to keep going, but you start sharing the love, you start getting it out there. Goldie Blox, their whole mission, and you can go back and find these things in their line, is that they're basically down to get rid of the pink aisle, but they use the way that young girls learned to get them excited about technology, building blocks, etc. And so they always had a story in every book or in every toy set. So you'd read the story, and then you start to build the things, and then you'd follow the instructions, and then you'd be told, okay, now just build whatever you want. There's different ideas for it. So it kind of takes that like Lego brick mentality, but also to a story and a narrative. And it was also around this one character named Goldie Blox, and she had her whole storyline, because girls like to read the stories, like the narrative concept, where boys were just like, build, I don't care. And I don't know where I was going with this. Oh, so there's so much discussion with my wife and I and some of our friends about like what we do with toys and what toys we give her. And like, I've always been a pusher of Lego, like just keep giving her Lego, and God loving, she loves it. But what happens after that? And Barbie was that thing, like, do we give Barbies? And there was a huge conversation, like, what message are we sending? And I really wish this movie came out earlier, because you start to understand that was the paradox of like, they kept pushing the agenda. They kept moving forward with these identities for women that we should have been aware of, but we were just thinking about pink plastic girls and girliness. And the fun fact that Ken has always been an accessory. He's never been a character. He's always just been on the side. That sells whole big things. Like, it's Barbie's dream house. Ken's name is not on the deed. Like, it's Barbie's house, it's Barbie's car, it's Barbie. Like, she has her own world, she has her own life. And the perspective of the dolls in the movie was that they had changed the world, right? So aren't they going to thank us for changing the world and making everything better? And then the view of the daughter, like, get away from me, fascist, is not that. And so that's a really cool ethical discussion about what has happened with pop culture, intentions of pop culture, unintended consequences of pop culture, and then what we're doing with it on our own, whether it was meant to be that way or not. And it's just that's what's so cool about, again, this, I keep saying this over and over again, but like, there's not an answer to this. It's just a lot of really cool thoughts that make you think about this stuff as you move forward. And when I went to see this with my daughter and my wife, walking away and talking about it with them, found out my daughter had a completely different takeaway from this movie. And I think as she gets older, some of these things are going to start to come in. And that's fine. She viewed it as dolls, magical world, real life, hijinks, solution. It's fine. She enjoyed it. She loved it. Talking with other parents in the week, like seeing other parents are like, oh, you let her see Barbie? Is that appropriate? It's the main conversation right now. Is this appropriate for this? I'm like, and every time I start becoming I become a certain person when that happens to me, but I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what are you worried about? And I remember one guy going, well, I heard there's jokes about boobs. I'm like, well, first off, there's one, and it's actually, the intent of it is not to be a derogatory joke. It's actually to show how dumb something was. And it wasn't about that at all. But it is completely appropriate. And they're like, well, they're going to get it. I'm like, it's not innuendo. Like, it's actually just some really deep existential thought and philosophy related to societal structure that they're not getting, which is fine. But you know what? I want them to know the movie, because that's going to grow in them over time, where they're going to realize that it's not abnormal or different or special to be an engineer or to be an astronaut or to be a Supreme Court judge. Like, these are just the things, the norms, and we need to reestablish those norms, or we need to push those new norms through the arts and let the mirrors kind of push back on us as a society. So it's just, there's a lot of thoughts, but this movie, just like I said, I keep thinking about it. I keep talking about it.
Yeah, gosh, can you guys imagine if like there was a society that functioned the way Barbie thought when she first went to the real world and was like, and was like, oh, like where's the president? Like seeing a guy there is like the immediate thought process is like, no way this could be a man. Which is like, it was a very visceral reminder that like there, like for so long, so much of history, it's been like, oh, there's no way that could be a woman.
Nothing but men on money, like Ken's scene where he's seeing nothing but men around, right? Like there's just all men on money. There's all these posters, these men walking around very serious. He goes into the doctor's office and I need a clicky pen. I'd like to do, can I speak to a doctor? I am a doctor. No, like a man. I need to talk to a man. I need a clipboard, a clicky pen, and I want to do an appendectomy. Like that's the funniest scene in the whole movie.
Oh gosh, yeah. Ken, Ryan Gosling was a great Ken.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I loved his sweatshirt at the end. It was like, I am Knuff.
I want to order it. I'm Knuff. I found t-shirt. I found it, not that actual sweatshirt, but I want to order the t-shirt. I found the t-shirt on Etsy. I'm going to order it.
I love it.
So good.
Yeah, or that. Oh, and I gotta say, I one of those shameless. I keep listening to his song like nonstop.
I'm just Ken.
Oh, I'm just Ken.
I'm just Ken.
Anywhere else, I'd be a 10.
In the shower, everywhere.
I mean, our household is filled with Taylor Swift or the Barbie album every single minute of every day. It is an awesome soundtrack.
It was amazing. It's like, I didn't even know Dua Lipa was going to be in the movie, but she made an appearance as like the mermaid. I was like, okay.
Did you guys like John Cena popping up as the merman?
Yeah. I was like, why does he look so familiar? And then it was afterwards, everybody was talking about it.
It turns out, I guess he was like filming Fast X on the same lot. And he heard that Margot Robbie's filming Barbie, and they're friends from Suicide Squad. And so he went over there and says, I will do whatever you want me to do if I can be in this movie. And they're like, do you want to be a mermaid? He's like, whatever you want me to do. It's like, okay, here's a wig, here's whatever. And they just filmed that in a day.
Wow. I love that. I love that.
Isn't that cool?
Little hidden intimate. Yeah. The more I like read about Barbie or see, there are more Easter eggs that like definitely went over my head the first time. So I think I have to watch it like at least one more time to fully understand like all of the nuances and thought that went into it. I think that like it really was just such a thoughtful movie.
Yeah.
Here's one for you. Weird Barbie. You mentioned Weird Barbie, or was it Celine? Were you mentioning Weird Barbie? Whoever had Weird Barbie, or was it Grace? I don't remember.
Someone did.
I think it was Grace.
It was Grace. Weird Barbie. When they had the cut to the flashback of the kid cutting the hair and doing all that stuff to it that showed how Weird Barbie became that way. If you freeze frame it, on the back, there are letters on the wall that say Gloria. That is America Ferrera's character as a kid making Weird Barbie, which implies that this whole thing is all about her existential crisis and her Barbies.
Oh,
she made that Weird Barbie. She had that whole experience and she's trying to hold on to it by giving it to her daughter. Her daughter's rejecting it. And that's where all these other things start coming into play.
Yeah, again, very layered. Great movie.
Yeah. And when I was looking at pictures from the Barbie premiere, I like saw CPA, like the Globe building from USC, like in the background of the photos, because it was like at the shrine right across the street.
Oh, they did it at the shrine?
Yeah, they did it at the shrine. So like I see like images of like Ryan Gosling and I see like USC's campus in the back. And I'm like, if I would have been on campus like at that time.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But the next day, I was on campus the next day and I saw like the Barbie posters that were up. So
cool.
And the Dunkin' Donuts near campus was like all decked out and like Barbie balloons and like pink rolling carpet. Yeah.
That's cool.
They're doing our marketing and advertising for us, Paul. Like USC, like we're like, oh, back at the Barbie premiere, like that's us. Yeah. Come to school here.
Okay. Well, also the movie's filled with USC alums. Will Ferrell, America Ferrera. Got a lot of pedigree in there.
Forgot about Will Ferrell. Yeah, that was a funny character.
It was funny. All right. So Oscar race, Academy Awards. Who wins what?
Oh gosh. Are they in the same category? Would it both be drama, or would Barbie be considered like
Oscars don't have drama versus comedy? It's just best film.
Okay.
Let me give you some categories. Best film. Best writing, best screenplay. And I think they would be both based on adapted screenplay because Barbie's based on a character that already existed and Oppenheimer is based on a story that was already written. So I think there actually would be competing there for writing and screenplay. Best director. I think that you probably would get a best supporting actor combo. Ryan Gosling would be going up against Robert Downey Jr.
I feel like the hardest one to choose would be best film, like overall, because they're so different, but also the same in that they're kind of like cultural shifts in terms of like going to the movies for like during that time, like seeing everyone dressed in pink. I was like, this is so cool because like everyone's in on it and everyone loves it and everyone's hyped about it. And that was like probably the best part about the whole Oppenheimer experience. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think I would be able to choose.
I'll get back to you once I watch Oppenheimer.
I think Nolan wins best director. I think Oppenheimer wins best film. I think Greta Gerwig wins best writing. I think this is really rough, but I think Robert Downey Jr. wins best supporting actor. I think Cillian Murphy wins best actor. Although it would be really great to see Ryan Gosling win because he was amazing in this movie. Like so fun.
He was so good.
But I think that I'm Just Ken wins best song.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And every time I see that scene or I hear that song, all I keep thinking of is like they have to redo this live in the Oscars. Like, can you imagine that live with everybody?
Oh, that would be good. And like with all the special effects too, I wonder like what new dances they'd break out in.
It'd be great. Lots of Kenergy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think go ahead, sir.
I was gonna say, are you a Ken? Paul, do you identify as a Ken or an Alan?
This is one thing I don't understand. I don't understand whether being described as an Alan or a Ken is positive or negative. Like the joke I didn't get was that NSYNC are all Allens. I still don't get it.
I haven't heard that joke.
That was in the movie.
Oh gosh. I don't know. Celine, how would you explain? This is a hard one to explain.
My daughter said Alan's better because Alan's friends with the Barbies. He doesn't become one of the Kens.
Yeah, it's Alan's more of an independent thinker and like true like a Barbie supporter, like is not swayed by like what would be the common male opinion or society. Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, I feel like that sums it up.
I don't know.
If you scroll through social media or like look it up, I'm sure somebody has written like a very thoughtful, expansive take on that.
On Alan versus Ken.
Yeah, because I know I have seen some videos where like there definitely seems to be more of a nuance to it that might have went over my head or just like I don't understand right away. But yeah, there are answers out there somewhere. I just don't know if I have them for you, Paul.
The truth is out there. I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on that one. I honestly do not know. And I'm sure there's some sort of movie in the future that'll explore the complexities of Ken, but you know, who are we kidding? There really isn't complexities of Ken.
He's just Ken. He just beaches.
And I'm Knuff. He doesn't beat. He just beach.
Just beach.
I just beach. And honestly, there's a certain level of simplicity that I love about that because I just want to beach too. My job is beach.
Tell that to Viterbi.
Exactly. My job is beach. All right. On that note, anything else you all wanted to talk about with either of these movies before we wrap it up? We're all good.
I think we got to leave it at beach.
My job is beach. Well, that was fun. I don't know if anybody listened to this whole thing because I could just go on and on and on with no actual point. I just have like thoughts that are random. If anyone's been paying attention to this, they're just random thoughts. They kind of coalesce. They kind of seem to make sense. But I'm glad you all joined us for this. Celine, thank you very much. Maya, thank you very much. Bye, Barbie. Bye, Barbie.
Bye, Barbie.
Bye,
Bye,
Ken.